Thank you all for joining us here at I-80 Sports, where today we've had a pretty busy week, but also a pretty not busy week in some eyes, and some interesting elephants in the room that we need to address a little bit. So without further ado, guys, thank you all for joining us here again at I-80 Sports. You all for joining us here at I-80 Sports. Make sure you follow us down below and subscribe down below, youtube.com/I-80 Sports. Hit us up in the comment section down below with what do you think of all the breaking news stories from this past week. It's been a little bit of a doozy, but also a little bit slow. We had a lot of news that rolled in late last week. Then there was a bit of a dead spot over the weekend, and we just got bombarded over the past few days with some interesting bits of news and unfortunate bits of news as well. Let us know in the comment section down below what you guys think. We'd love to join on the conversation. Hit the like button as well if you like the content that we're giving you. And make sure you hit the bell notifications so that way you guys know when we go live with all of our videos. You also want to make sure that you hit up our other content as well. The MLS team is really starting to get going again. If you're a big fan of European football, please make sure that you go and check out the MLS page. They've been working tirelessly on new content. And make sure you follow us down below at I-80_sports NHL on X. And if you guys follow us on X already, thank you guys so much because we greatly value all of your support. I'm Brian. He's Tom. Tom, how are you doing today?
Doing well. And it's been a rather interesting week in hockey. A lot of stuff to talk about and a lot of ups, a lot of downs.
A lot of ups, a lot of downs, and actually because of a lot of the stuff that we got to talk about this week, the one thing I am going to preface is we normally do our injury report this week, but because of everything that we got to talk about this week, I'm actually going to skip over the injury report. I'm thinking about maybe making this a bi-weekly endeavor for our injury report, unless there's anything big and pertinent coming up, because it really takes a while and wears me down after a while reading the injury report. But we can certainly let you guys know different sources that we use for our injury report. Covers.com is one of the places that we use. But we'll dive right in. It's time to talk about some top stories of the week. Let's hit up the traffic report.
The I-80 Sports Traffic Report, where you can find all your news and notes from the week.
All right, so we have to address a certain elephant in the room. His name is Steve. Bad joke. Anyway, I needed to make light of a very horrific situation here. And I know that there are probably a few individuals that are kind of curious about our takes on this. And for those of you that don't know the situation that we're talking about the 2018 World Juniors situation, as I'll call it. And I'm going to be a little bit more serious here and really kind of be a little bit more diplomatic with this, just simply because it's a very sensitive situation. It's a very triggering situation. If you go out and actually read the reports, the allegations, and the investigation, it's a trigger warning for those of you that have ever been in that specific situation. It's a trigger warning for sexual assault for those that are curious. And there were recently 5 players who have taken a leave of absence after the London, Ontario police has called for 5 individuals from the 2018 World Juniors team to turn themselves into custody for charges being pressed on them stemming from this 2018 World Juniors tournament. I'm not going to name those players. It's all over the internet, as well as the rest of the information. I am going to right now take the high road right now and just say that until we have all information, have all of our ducks in a row, cross our I's, dot our T's, really want to make sure that we have all the correct information with no rumors, allegations, and not pick one side or the other and just be diplomatic about this until there is a official verdict on what has happened here. All I will say is this is a matter that should be taken seriously and should be handled seriously as well. All I ask is that down below in the comment section below, please be serious down in the comment section below. I don't want it to turn into a breeding ground for bad takes. I don't want it to turn into a baseless conversation down below, because we do need to consider the victim in this situation too, as well as the players who are currently facing these very serious charges as well. So that being said, we're going to continue on with this episode. Understand that we are very well aware of this situation. We certainly do have our own current thoughts on this, Tom and I. Teams are certainly going to be in trouble based on this as well. Tom and I were talking about before, not to put words in Tom's mouth. It's going to be an interesting situation for the Philadelphia Flyers. It's going to be an interesting situation for the Calgary Flames and the New Jersey Devils as well, based on the players that are involved. And we have no further comment beyond that. But until this investigation is wrapped up and we've actually reached a verdict, that's when we'll be ready to talk about it. But until then, we're going to let this be. We're going to let this fester. We're going to let this settle a little bit until we have more information and we can actually really synthesize our thoughts properly on this. Tom, is there anything you wanted to add on that?
Not really. Unfortunately, with some of the individuals involved, this may be a big problem for the teams that they are currently playing on. Is some players in this investigation were integral parts of the teams they were on, and two said teams were already teetering on the brink, one of which was already starting to decline a little bit, and it may turn into a bigger problem later on if these guys are indeed going to have to suffer some serious consequences. And that's all I'll say about that.
Yeah. We're going to move on from here. We're going to keep things on the lighter side. Sorry, Steve, for throwing you. Goodbye. All right. So anyway, moving right along here, we're going to start up by talking about some more recent news that came up earlier this week. So Utah Jazz ownership is actually quite interested in bringing an NHL team to Utah. And there have been some interesting rumors because anytime any city is talking about bringing a team to their city, everybody immediately thinks one city. Oh, we could relocate the Arizona Coyotes. So, Tom, I'm going to let you start on this one. Do you think that this potential proposal of bringing a team to Utah, do you think that this is an implication maybe for the Arizona Coyotes to relocate, or do you think that we could be getting a 33rd team?
I really hope we're not getting a 33rd team. I still think 32 is too much. 32 is nice and even, but I don't think they should go with any more than that. If it is an implication for the Coyotes to relocate, then by all means do it. Enough is enough with them. Enough is enough. They keep trying to force feed people in Arizona to watch this team, whereas most people in Arizona, it's not that people in Arizona don't care about hockey. It's that you do have a lot of transplants in Arizona, namely from a place like Chicago, and they're not going to stop being Blackhawks fans. You have some New York transplants there. They're not going to stop being Ranger fans. It's just not going to work. Utah, they have the arena where the Jazz play, and if you remember, about 22 years ago, Utah hosted the 2002 Winter Olympics. They drew pretty well. The games drew pretty well out there. And you know, it could turn into being a natural geographical rival for the Colorado Avalanche, who really don't have any teams anywhere near them in the Rocky Mountain area of the United States. It's just the Avalanche there. Nobody else. So it might work out in a way for the Avs to have an American rival in Utah. Will it happen? I don't know. I think Bettman is really trying to force this Arizona thing, just like he tried to force the Atlanta thing. But at the end of the day, if they're not willing to work with him in Arizona, they're not willing to try to build a new building anywhere, whether it be Tempe or Phoenix or Tucson or wherever, and Utah has the building, eventually he's just going to have to bite the bullet and say, hey, listen, I failed in Arizona, just like I failed in Atlanta again, okay? I failed. There's nothing more I can do. Let Utah have a team. He's not sending a team back to Canada because we all know how much he loves sending teams back to Canada and how angry he is about having a team in Winnipeg again. I don't know why. Let Utah try. Salt Lake City's they've supported an NBA team over the years, and the Olympics did pretty well there back in 2002. So by all means, try it out. Why not?
I mean, in my opinion, I think obviously when you think Utah, you think probably one of the largest cities in Utah being Salt Lake City. And Salt Lake City does have some hockey history there, not like significant hockey history. There has been professional hockey played there before. And it started in 1969 with the Salt Lake Golden Eagles. And they were a minor league hockey team. They were a minor league, just purely minor league, never anything more than that. Dissolved not too long afterwards. There's currently one team in Utah, which is the Utah Grizzlies, and they're the ECHL affiliate to the Colorado Avalanche. So hockey can work in the state of Utah. But I guess the question becomes, will we see it happen? Who knows? I think it's going to really take a while for the wheels to kind of spin on this. I think this is going to be at least a taste, a little teaser of like, okay, this is a city that's interested in having an NHL team. But I'm kind of with Tom on this one, where I'd rather a team relocate there rather than create an outright 33rd team. I think 32 is plenty. I don't think we need in the NHL more NHL teams because we don't want an oversaturation of the market either. Oversaturation in any major market is never a good thing. So we do want to make sure that, there is proper competition throughout the NHL and that you don't have these super teams being built and then left with teams that are only going to win 10 games a season. I think very similarly to the 1990s when we saw a bunch of expansion teams at that point, and this oversaturation take place during then, where the San Jose Sharks, when they first came in, were trash. The Tampa Bay Lightning, when they first came in, were trash. The Florida Panthers had a rough go their first few years. The Ottawa Senators were another team that had a rough go when they first came in the 1990s. We got lucky these past, half decade with having the Vegas Golden Knights have such a strong showing coming into the NHL because of the expansion rules, and same with the Seattle Kraken to a lesser extent. But there comes a point with oversaturation where there's not going to be enough professional players to really field these teams, or at least of the proper caliber that the NHL, that Gary Bettman truly wants. I don't know. My 2 cents on that one. Tom, you were going to interject?
Yeah, the only issue I foresee happening with this is that the Delta Center, where the Jazz do indeed play, was built to be a basketball arena. I'm looking at what they have to do for hockey. They have to push the lower seats back in order to fit a hockey rink in there. There's probably, if the NHL is serious about this, there's probably going to have to be some work done on that arena if they're serious about going over to Salt Lake City. Because I can easily see Bettman and his love for Arizona saying, well, the arena's no good. Even though the Coyotes are playing in Mullet Arena, the arena's no good. We can't have seats pushed back like that. So that could be a problem. We'll see what happens.
It could be problematic. I mean, if there's enough money in Utah's ownership group, there could be the proposal of a new stadium that can field both a basketball and hockey team. There are plenty of stadiums in the NHL that house both a basketball and hockey team. It's not completely unheard of. The East Coast is chock full of those stadiums. So maybe that ownership group in Utah, maybe that's a route that they could take instead of full on renovating that stadium to fit a hockey team. But it's all hearsay. I think it's an interesting news story that I think we're going to be tracking over the course of the next few years, honestly, because realistically speaking, we wouldn't see any real movement on a new NHL team, at least for the next few years, more than likely. So the Arizona Coyotes, don't worry, Arizona fans, all 2 of you, they're there to stay for now. Moving right along here. So the New Jersey Devils, who have had a pretty interesting week for reasons that we will not state at the moment, given what we talked about before. But Tom Fitzgerald might be the general manager of the New Jersey Devils, might be getting ready to do something here, as the New Jersey Devils have placed Dougie Hamilton finally on LTIR. And history really shows that you really don't move a player to LTIR unless you're really ready to move some money back onto the team. So, Tom, I'll start here with you. And this is going to be a question I'm going to come out of left field on, but based on the different needs that the Devils currently have because of their injuries, where do you think they need to spend their money most right now to get them to a competitive spot again? Because they're still a very competitive team within the Metropolitan Division. They're not far out of a playoff spot at all. So if you're the Devils, where are you spending your money right now?
You need to spend your money with your goaltending. Right now, Calgary is open for business. Jacob Markstrom's name has been getting thrown around. With Hamilton coming off, that might be the guy they want to go looking for, Jacob Markstrom. That would really be it for me. Obviously, the center depth with Jack Hughes being out, and you have a guy out there like Elias Lindholm, who at the very worst, if Hughes is back and his year's back and he could play third-line center. He also could play on the right side, Elias Lindholm. So I know the Flames have been dangling them. They've been dangling Noah Hannafin as well. I'm not so sure they need to go out after him right now. But guys like Elias Lindholm and Jacob Markstrom might be two names they want to go looking for. Lindholm's also going to be a guy who's going to be looked at by a lot of other teams, especially the Boston Bruins, who really do need some. I wouldn't say they necessarily need help at center, but upgrading their center depth wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for them either at this point. So I don't think if the Bruins went and got Lindholm, it would hurt anything either. So just something to think about. But I think all eyes are going to be on Calgary right now, especially with Markstrom being dangled and the Flames not having the greatest of years.
Yeah, if you ask me, I think Calgary's going to be a bit under a microscope when it comes to the trade deadline in terms of what pieces they're really going to cast off and who they're going to really build around moving forward for the Calgary Flames. There are other interesting names that are out there if you are a Devils fan that are thinking, okay, we can spend some money. What can we go and get? And I'm going to agree with Tom here that the goaltending has been painfully inconsistent. Vitek Vanacek, as much as I love the guy, he just hasn't been consistent between the pipes. He's had flashes of really solid play and then moments where you just shake your head and you're just like, what happened there? Akira Schmid, unfortunately, has been streaky enough that he's been down in Utica getting his confidence back. We haven't seen him since the beginning of December. Nico Dawes, who in some limited play has been decent, but not the answer, unfortunately. So if I'm sitting here in my armchair, GM chair, I'm thinking that you do need to address the goaltending. And obviously, it's going to come at the sacrifice. No matter what trade you're making, unfortunately, it means that Vitek Vanacek probably has to be cast off to the Wolves as well, because his cap hit is probably going to need to come off to make this work, no matter what. Either that or you find a very simple trade for like a 6th or 5th round pick for him, if his value is even that at the moment. You got some interesting names, though. Jacob Markstrom is the first name that Tom mentioned before. And enticing name, might cost you a little bit to go and get him. You might have some costly pieces that go the other way, especially if you want to package that with either Chris Tanev or Elias Lindholm or Noah Hannafin. If I'm the Devils, honestly, I would probably address the right-hand side with Dougie being out and go for Chris Tanev if I'm the Devils, if you want to make a package deal. The other popular name that's been thrown out there is John Gibson, which obviously the one deterrent to picking up John Gibson is his cap hit. You would probably have to negotiate with Anaheim to eat some of that salary moving forward, if possible, just because Dougie's not going to be on LTIR forever, and everybody's not going to be on injury reserve forever either. These contracts are going to be hitting against the cap eventually. And John Gibson doesn't have a very cap friendly salary at the moment. He's making $6.5 million per year. And it's also for the next 3 or 4 years that he's making that. So he's an enticing avenue for the New Jersey Devils. It certainly makes you competitive now, but you have to think long-term. Is this a guy that you want to hitch your saddle to? Now, other low-key names that I've seen thrown out there, if you want some less bougie, goalies and maybe just safer picks, I've seen Jake Allen of the Montreal Canadiens thrown out there, which might be a nice, safe pickup for the New Jersey Devils. Might not even cost you that much to go and get him either. And he's a reliable 1B type of goaltender. Certainly not flashy, but consistent. Chris Driedger of the Seattle Kraken is another name that I've seen thrown out there. Again, not flashy, but potentially consistent. The last name that I've seen thrown out there, I don't know if this is a name realistically that I could really see being dealt. Juuse Saros of the Nashville Predators. It would cost the Devils quite a bit to go and get him if they truly do decide to pivot at that move. But make no mistake, if the Devils were to make a move for Juuse Saros, that immediately makes them one of the favorites in the Metropolitan Division, even with the injuries. You all of a sudden pick up a goaltender that is the second best goaltender in the Metropolitan Division at that point, behind Igor Shesterkin. I'll still yield and say that Igor is still the best goaltender in the Metropolitan Division. But if it's the conversation between Sorokin and Saros, I think Saros is a better goaltender than Sorokin at the moment. It would cost the Devils quite a bit to go and do that. But no matter what, Tom Fitzgerald has quite the road in front of him as we approach the trade deadline. Tom Fitzgerald, who was also recently signed to a multi-year extension by New Jersey Devils, and he's also been named president of hockey operations. So he's got a little bit more voice within the organization now all of a sudden. So I'll be curious to see where things kind of go for the New Jersey Devils going from here. And the moves that they're going to make and try to salvage this season the best that they can. Salvage, even though all things considered, they're still above 500. So would love to see what the Devils end up doing with the cap space that they're going to be saving on Dougie Hamilton, but we'll see moving forward. Next headline that we're going to talk about. Sticking to the Metropolitan Division here, we have a new coach within the Metropolitan Division. It was announced over the weekend that the Islanders made a coaching change. They have now since hired Patrick Waugh to be the head coach of the New York Islanders. Tom, immediate reaction here. Good move, bad move by the Islanders. What are you thinking?
It's an interesting move. Patrick Waugh, in my opinion, is the greatest goaltender to ever play the game.
Gross.
Gross. Yeah, it's not gross. I got my reasons for that. And it's got no bias about Marty Brodeur either. It's just he basically won 2 cups in Montreal by himself. He had no help whatsoever on either one of those teams. But that's besides the point. He had coached previously in Colorado. The team trended downward each year he was there. In 2013, 2014, they won the division, made the playoffs, got knocked out in round 1. They just missed in 14-15, and 15-16, they basically just missed as well. I do wonder what had happened in Colorado. I wonder if he said the wrong thing to the wrong person. I wonder if they just were looking to move on from him. I don't really know. It is a little interesting to me that Lou Lamoriello would ask him to be head coach after he basically took the Stanley Cup away from Lou Lamoriello in 01. Now, I don't say that he won that cup in 01 by himself on Colorado. That team had a lot of other names that helped him out too. But I do find it funny because the performance he put on in Game 6 versus the Devils that year was nothing short of spectacular. And he took that cup away from Lou Lamoriello that year. Same time, coaching-wise, he had been coaching in the Quebec Major Junior League or the Quebec Maritime Junior League. Now that's the new name of it, with the aforementioned Quebec Ramparts. He'd been coaching with them for the last few years, and he capped off his coaching with Quebec with a Memorial Cup victory last year. The team won 53 games, lost 12, lost 3 in overtime. So 109 points, and they won the Memorial Cup. So I think he was getting the itch again to go back into the NHL. I just think he had coached enough in juniors, and I tip my cap to him because he did it right. He went to juniors and got the experience as a head coach instead of just coming into the NHL and demanding he be a head coach somewhere. So it's curious to see what happens with the Islanders here. They did win their first game with him behind the bench against Dallas, but they've lost their game since. They're losing 3-1 in Montreal right now in his old stomping grounds in Montreal, Quebec. So we'll see where it goes with Patrick Waugh. It's an interesting hire, but the unfortunate part about it is I think the Islanders have a lot more problems right now than the head coach.
They're another team that's been dealing with the injury bug as well. Lou Lamoriello is he's not shy to make a coaching change midseason. He's never been shy of doing that, even with his tenure with the New Jersey Devils. I think Patrick Roy is an interesting match here for the New York Islanders. I'm just wondering when he is eventually going to overstay his welcome, given the fact that, he is a very outspoken coach. He's a very going against the grain type of coach, going against management type of coach. And Lou has always been a bit of a my way or the highway type of guy. It doesn't matter how good you are, kick rocks if you're not going to agree with me here. I'm wondering if that's going to be the same case later on down the road with the New York Islanders here. Patrick Roy, I think, could be an interesting solution so far, though. I think he's going to provide an immediate jolt to a kind of dull lineup at the moment for New York Islanders. They came in with more expectation on them, not to be like this groundbreaking, big team in the Metropolitan Division, but certainly competitive. And they haven't really been as competitive as previously hoped. So obviously moving on from Lambert and picking up Patrick Roy, who just won a Memorial Cup, I think is a solid move. And Patrick Roy has already had an impact. He already has a 500 record as the head coach of the New York Islanders. So we'll monitor it going forward. I think it's a decent move, though, in the immediate for the New York Islanders. Got a few quick things to talk about here. Corey Perry has a new home. He has signed a 1-year deal with the Edmonton Oilers. Decent move here for the Edmonton Oilers. Picks up some third and fourth line depth and some leadership to an already stacked Edmonton Oilers team that has won 13 games in a row, which nuts. Also, the Ottawa Senators have signed Shane Pinto officially to a 1-year deal, and he's going to be making his comeback to the NHL after serving his 41-game suspension. Kind of crazy that we're already through 41 games in the NHL season. Nuts to me. Zach Parise looks like he could be signing after the NHL All-Star break, and the leading rumor going right now is the Colorado Avalanche being the suitors right now for Zach Parise. So Zach Parise could be looking for that Stanley Cup trophy that has eluded him since 2012, the closest he ever got with the New Jersey Devils. I'll also say this for Zach Parise, though. The Devils have center depth, even though they're going to be missing one unnamed player moving forward. They have got center depth. They've got Curtis Lazar and Eric Howla and Dawson Mercer that can all handle the duties up the middle. Who's to say that a reunion with Zach Parise could not potentially be in the cards if Tom Fitzgerald wanted to pull the trigger on that? But push comes to shove, if you ask me where I think Parise's going, I think where there's smoke, there's fire. I think it could very well be with the Colorado Avalanche. I think that might be the more logical landing spot, especially given the last bit of news here. Valerie Nichushkin has entered the player assistance program. And we wish Valerie Nichushkin all the best in his recovery and as he takes this hard time away from the Colorado Avalanche as well. Tom, any thoughts on a bunch of those little quick hits?
Well, I mean, Corey Perry, we all knew he was going somewhere. It's just the Edmonton ones, yet again, a head scratcher, as well as they're playing. I'm still not sold on the D and the goaltending, despite the streak they're on. Great that they signed Corey Perry, but I mean, I think they're all right up top right now on forward. 12 forwards they have, I think they're okay with it. And they're doing what I always said they shouldn't do. They have McDavid and Draisaitl playing together again. That's besides the point. I mean, he signed for league minimum there. Edmonton always seems to go after people who've been in trouble. Look at Evander Kane, for example. I don't know.
Not wrong.
Nichushkin, it's sad that it happened. And that is maybe why they're going after Parise. They don't know when Nichushkin will be back. Gabe Landeskog is still remains to be seen what's happening. You really look at them. Their first line is Jonathan Drouin, Nathan McKinnon, and Mikko Rantanen, and after that it falls off. They have Arturi Lehkonen playing on the third line, who is decent enough, but I think that's somebody who they could really use, if not for the second line, the third or fourth line. I guess the hope is that Nichushkin can figure out whatever's going on. He can get back soon. And maybe, just maybe, Landeskog will be ready to go for the playoffs. Right now, I like the way the Avs are playing, but I just don't know as constructed right now. And I know I said the other day to somebody that they could win the cup again. But I look up and down this lineup right now, and I don't know if this team could get out of the Central Division, let alone go 4 rounds and try to win another Stanley Cup. The second-line center is eluded. The second-line center spot's eluded them. Maybe they'll put Parise there. I don't know if that's really going to work with him being a little bit older. So it's just somebody to help out, hopefully, when everybody's healthy. And hopefully, he'll be able to get his name on the Stanley Cup if the Avs can win their second cup in 4 years. But right now, the West is really strong, and it's going to be a battle for them. But it might be a step in the right direction.
Yeah. So we're going to move on from here from our top stories. We're going to move on to Wow or Worrisome, where we talk about teams that are wowing us and teams that are worrying us at the moment. Tom, let's start here with you. Wow or Worrisome? Who's wowing you? Who's worrying you?
Well, I mean, I got the obvious elephant in the room here, like the one, Steve, you said, the Boston Bruins. They did lose last night, but they just keep trudging along. They had a little bit of a hiccup there in late December, early January, but they're right back in at 67 points. They're second in the league right now to Vancouver, but still doesn't matter. I'm shocked at the Bruins the last 2 years. Last year, they were very stacked. This year, I figured, okay, bubble team out of the playoffs. They're one of the best teams in the league yet again. Yet again, these Bruins are one of the best teams in the league. Hats off to the Bruins. Really hats off to them. Let's see. Hold on. I got to move this over here. Another team that's wowing me, a team that I left for dead, a team that's really been Jekyll and Hyde this year, and that's the Detroit Red Wings. They're playing in Philly right now. I'm just trying to maximize this because this bar doesn't want to work. They've lost 1, but in their last 10 are 7-2-1. Patrick Kane is hurt for them. And maybe you're going to have some of the naysayers saying, well, he's hurt, keep him out of the lineup. He didn't help the team at all. But now the Red Wings are starting to slowly inch their way back into the playoffs, which is going to lead me to talk about the next team. Tampa Bay Lightning, 7-3-0 in their last 10. The Lightning are starting to inch their way back in. And now if the Red Wings and Lightning keep playing the way they're playing, I mean, could that be it right there? Could those two teams cement those last 2 wildcard spots, and then that turns into trouble for teams like the New Jersey Devils and New York Islanders? Obviously, I think the Philadelphia Flyers will regress a little bit, but it's going to turn into, if you're a Metro Division team, you're going to need to finish in spots 1, 2, or 3, especially if those 2 teams are going to nail down the wild cards, and you're going to have the Bruins, Panthers, and Leafs as 1, 2, and 3 in the Atlantic. So Detroit Red Wings and Tampa Bay Lightning, hats off to them. Vancouver Canucks, yet again, what more can you say about them? They have won. They lost last night to St. Louis, but 8-0-2 in their last 10. They had a little bit of a hiccup, 69 points, top team in the league right now, the Canucks, yet again. Hats off to the Canucks, but I want to see what they do come playoff time because I'm going to be curious to know how this is going to work out for them. Another team that's finding their stride, again, the Vegas Golden Knights. They had been iffy since they went on the run when the season started. 6-3-1 in their last 10, and they come in to play the struggling Rangers tomorrow night. Vegas is now starting to make some noise in the Pacific again, and now you have Vancouver, Vegas, and Edmonton as your top 3 teams. And the Pacific's going to be interesting come playoff time if it is those 3 in a wild card team. It's going to be really interesting to see where these series go. So now to move on to my worrisome, I'll address the elephant in the room again. My favorite team, the Rangers. I was sitting there assuming that they'll go out on this West Coast trip and they'll right the ship. They went out. They had a bad game against Vegas. They did. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. They go in against LA Saturday night, can't seem to generate any chances, and yet again, Keandre Miller is the scapegoat again. But I don't want to scapegoat him. But again, bad defensive plays by Keandre Miller lost them that game in regulation. He doesn't make a bad play on the Byfield goal. That's at least 1 point in an overtime loss. He doesn't make 2 bad plays against DC 2 weeks ago. That's a regulation win. That's 3 points. They don't have the brain fart against Montreal back in the beginning of the month. That's another win. That's 2 points. They beat Anaheim. They show some character in that third period and win 5-2. Then the other night, they go out. They utterly dominate San Jose. They're up 2-0 heading into the third. You figure, okay, they're going to walk out of here. The trip's a 500 trip, better than nothing. They allow 2 goals real quick again. Bad plays in the defensive zone, this time by Eric Gustafsson. When they go up 2-0 and they deal with any adversity, they seem to forget how to play in the defensive zone. I don't know why. And then in the overtime, Mika Zibanejad basically he turns into clutch and grab hockey again. He gets picked on his glove twice when he has the puck, and San Jose scores the goal, and there's no call. I was a little upset about that too. I'm happy they got the point. They're still in first place right now, but they only have a 4-point lead on Carolina. And the games I mentioned earlier, that 4-point lead right now could have been a 9-point lead. So, my hope is Philip Hedl is back. He skated today. My hope is he can come back in the lineup, bolster the center depth. Drury's got work to do with the trade deadline. The only thing is this. Philadelphia is regressing, who I'm going to speak about next. The Rangers might find themselves as a lucky team going into the end of the season where they don't have to worry about too many teams gaining on them and maybe even get a home playoff spot or win the division just out of sheer luck. I'll move on to the next team, the Philadelphia Flyers, who I had just sort of addressed. They've lost their last 3 in a row. And after everybody was kind of tipping their cap to the Flyers in their resurgence, now they're running into a little bit of trouble, these Flyers. All of a sudden, maybe they're not this team that everybody thought was just going to come back and make the playoffs again and all would be right in Philly. I think a lot of Flyer fans didn't expect them to win the Stanley Cup this year. But, I mean, a lot of people were maybe talking playoffs, and maybe now that's not the case. The aforementioned Detroit Red Wings are beating them 3-0 right now. So the Flyers got a lot to think about right now. These next couple of weeks are going to determine, is their goal the playoffs or is their goal to sell at the deadline and bring in some more young players and draft picks? And, well, the last team, a team that might be having some more trouble than the Rangers, and a team the Rangers lost to, the LA Kings. Kings, they've lost their last game, 22-14-9, 2-5-3 the Kings are in their last 10. And Drew Doughty said the other night, they don't seem to be caring about wins and losses. They seem to be worrying about individual stat lines right now. And these Kings, who I thought were going to be a shoo-in in the Pacific Division, now aren't anymore. They're a wild card team. And right now, maybe they're sitting pretty as a wild card team, but you have the St. Louis Blues knocking on that wild card door right now, and the Arizona Coyotes, along with the Seattle Kraken, who have sort of regressed as well. So the Kings, they're another one. If they can't right the ship soon, they got to think about what they want to do. They're not the youngest team in the league anymore.
Yeah. A lot to digest there. I mean, for me, in terms of teams that have been wowing me lately, I mean, teams in Florida right now, the Florida Panthers and the Tampa Bay Lightning, both teams that have been playing really decent hockey as of late. The Florida Panthers are still staying afloat right now in second place in the Atlantic Division right now behind the Boston Bruins. They're only 5 points out from Boston at the moment for the Eastern Conference lead at the moment. They're second in the entire Eastern Conference right now. Tampa Bay really creeping their way back in here too. And Toronto has had a pretty midweek. They've been 500 over their last 10 games. They've won 2 in a row, but I got to think with Tampa Bay really starting to surge all of a sudden that Toronto's got to wake up a little bit. Ilya Samsonov coming back strong is good, but Toronto needs to pick it up a little bit here. Buffalo really trying hard to kind of scratch and claw their way back up in the Atlantic Division, but I feel like it might be a little bit too little too late right now. They're 6-4 over their last 10, and it's unfortunate that's a little bit, too little too late because they're a fun team. Looking down at the Metropolitan Division, yeah, what's going on with New York Rangers lately, man? It's not a good look. 3-5-2 in their last 10. Something's got to give, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tom. Brendan Ottman ended up getting sent back down, correct?
He did get sent back down. I didn't understand why. Capo Caco is back right now. He hasn't been great. I think he's been okay. I don't know why they sent him back down. Blake Wheeler is playing in the natural spot on the third line where he belongs. He should not be playing in the first line. I don't understand why they don't want to keep calling him up. I guess the reason why is they kept Will Cooley down all year last year. He came up, played a couple games, and this year he's playing pretty well. And I'm wondering if that's just what they're trying to do. They don't want to rush. They don't want to rush him in. So I don't understand why that is either. Fact is, I do think they're going to be players at the deadline. I read some ridiculous post by some idiot fan saying, "Oh, you know what? This team's not good enough. The cracks are showing. Let's start taking Coulson's advantage. Adam Fox, moving for the no moving close start. Let's start rebuilding again. That doesn't make sense when you're 2 years removed from a conference final and you had an idiotic. And I don't want to say Gallant's an idiotic coach, but he made an idiotic decision last year in a series that you were 30 minutes from going up 3-0 on and would have come out of and probably gone to at least Eastern Conference Finals again. Yet people want to destroy the team, rebuild it. Now, all of a sudden, Alexis Lafreniere, who has been having a decent year and a good year, everyone's calling him a bust again. Let's say, oh, let's start taking calls. I don't understand why everybody wants to tear the team down again all of a sudden. You have a couple bad games. It doesn't make any sense. But
because tri-state area fans, man, we're tri-state area fans, we're not happy till you're not happy. Period. End of story.
Yeah.
That's how it's
and
always
I mean, don't
been.
get me wrong. I'm not confident going in the game against Vegas tomorrow night, but if they can beat Vegas tomorrow night and they can beat Ottawa going into the break, things are trending upward. You figure Drury's going to be in Toronto at the All-Star break. You figure he's going to have conversations with teams about somebody. I heard about a deal potentially sending Miller and a first to Ottawa to bring back Tarasenko and Chychrun, both at half retained. I wouldn't mind doing that either. Another name floating around was Jordan Eberle to come over, and I actually don't hate that idea either as a first-line right winger for the playoffs. People piss and moan about the Buchnevich deal. They didn't have the money to keep him. They didn't have the money to keep him, and everybody knew he was going to be looking for top dollar. So I don't know. It's still January. Better it happens now than in April, and they come into the playoffs falling apart. I still think that the ship can be righted. I still think it can be fixed. I didn't like what's happened in the past couple of weeks. I think that they did cough up 5 points. I hope the 5 points don't cost them in the end, like the 7 points did last year. The 7 points they blew last year cost them a division title. So we'll see what happens. I'm not, they really need to right the ship with these multi-goal lapses and this laissez-faire play in the defensive zone. The games that the LA game should have been an OT loss at minimum. The San Jose game should have been a win.
Yeah, what it could have, should have. But the Rangers do need to clean it up lately. Carolina Hurricanes, on the other hand, 7-2-1 in their last 10 games as well. And if the Rangers aren't careful, they're going to lose their standing to the Carolina Hurricanes over the course of the next week, maybe going into the All-Star break. So you got to hope for a strong finish going into the All-Star break and get the momentum back once you come back from the All-Star break. Philadelphia Flyers, I'll be curious to see post All-Star break how they continue their play, because they are starting to fall off very, very slightly. Itty bitty bits of cracks are starting to show. One bigger crack to them is, losing one of their goaltenders. Erisson has really turned a corner lately in net, but now he's going to need to take it on his own. So I'm wondering if Philadelphia is going to be in the market for one of these goaltenders that I was alluding to before. I'll be really curious to see if Philadelphia ends up making some kind of move. If Daniel Briere, the GM of the Philadelphia Flyers, maybe makes a few phone calls and maybe see if he can provide some help to Erisson in the pipes. New Jersey Devils are still treading water in the Metropolitan Division. They're certainly still very much in the mix of things lately. They're 5-4-1. They're right in the middle of the pack in their last 10. What gives me hope as a New Jersey Devils fan, though, even though that they have suffered among the most goals and relinquished among the most goals in the Metropolitan Division with 159 goals against, that's tied for second amongst Metropolitan teams. Surprisingly tied for second is the New York Islanders. Really surprising in my end. But what gives me hope is that the Devils are 1 goal behind the current lead for goals for in the NHL, in the Metropolitan Division at the moment. They're 1 goal behind the Carolina Hurricane for goals for in the Metropolitan Division. The Devils have scored 156 goals this season. So sometimes a really good defense is a really good offense. So if the Devils can find a way post All-Star break to really start getting healthy again and righting the ship, they could be a really strong team kind of going forward. A team I start to worry about in the Metropolitan Division is the Washington Capitals. They're really slowly starting to fall out of things right now. They're 4-6 in their last 10. They were a team that really started off strong in the middle of the pack in the Metropolitan, but as the season goes on, I start to get a little bit concerned. They've lost their last 3 in a row. Let's move away from the Eastern Conference. Let's move on to the Western Conference here. And what more can you say about Winnipeg and Colorado at the top of the Central Division? Both teams have been amazing. Colorado headlined by Nathan MacKinnon with another second 4-goal response in a season. Both teams have been, really just playing such good hockey lately. Another team also playing good hockey, the Dallas Stars lately have been very strong. A team that's starting to worry me, though, is the Nashville Predators. They're starting to find their way slowly out of that number 4 spot in the Central Division that they've kind of held a nice, good, stranglehold over for the past few weeks now. They're right at 500 over the last 10 games, but look out. The St. Louis Blues have won their last 3 in a row. They're 6-3-1 over their last 10. St. Louis could be taking over that 4th spot in the Western Conference in the Central Division pretty soon. So they're a team to watch. Arizona, you can never count that team out. They're so fun to watch. Minnesota's, don't look now. Minnesota's starting to pick it up after I gave them some flack during our last recap. They've won their last 3 games. They're starting to find their way back up in the Western Conference.
You want to talk about a rebuild? That's a team that might want to start thinking about that.
Yeah, there's a lot of dead cap there though, so they got to wait. They're stuck in purgatory at the moment, so they got to wait still a little bit longer on that end. But Minnesota could be a team that in the next few years definitely could be hitting the big fat rebuild button. Lastly, the Pacific Division. Like Tom said before, what more can we say about the Vancouver Canucks and the Edmonton Oilers that hasn't already been said? Edmonton, at the end of October and early November, were at the very bottom of the Pacific Division. And lo and behold, here they are, 3rd place Pacific Division, and continuing, and probably going to be higher in the next few weeks. Could maybe even take 2nd place from Vegas if Vegas isn't careful.
It's like it flip-flopped. It's crazy. Last year, the East was so tight and the West was kind of just everybody wasn't playing well. And this year is the opposite. The West is tight, and the East, outside of Boston and Carolina right now, nobody's, and maybe Boston, Carolina, and Florida, nobody's really playing that well.
Yeah. Realistically speaking, in the Pacific Division, you just have teams that have some distinct identities right now. In the Western Conference, it's unfair to count out, I can math, 5. Again, math skills are not working for me. Sorry, 6. Yeah, it's unfair to count out 13 of these teams in the Western Conference. It's unfair to count them out yet. Calgary's still very much in the mix. Seattle's still very much in the mix. Minnesota's in the mix. The only 3 teams realistically that we can count out pretty comfortably at this point are Chicago, Anaheim, and San Jose, based on their record right now. But those other teams that I just mentioned, Calgary, Seattle, Minnesota, all teams that are still hanging in there and still hanging out there. Calgary's been flagging a little bit lately, losing their last 3, but they're still in that mix. They're still in there. So, left to be seen. Just there's a lot of hockey left, but man, the Western Conference might be worth watching over the next few weeks. All right, let's start rounding out this episode a little bit here. It's time to unwind a little bit, talking about some players that have done some really good things over the last week. Let's talk high performance.
Your I-80 Sports High Performance Players of the Week.
Okay, Tom, who do you want to highlight here as your Players of the Week?
Well, Nathan MacKinnon is one of them. 13 points in his last 5 games and 4 goals against Washington last night. I like what he's doing for Colorado. He's leading the league in points right now. He's having a great individual season. It's just Colorado's got to really work on their depth come the deadline and deal with.
There were more than just hats hitting the ice last night.
Yeah, we saw that too. And don't get me wrong, he wins the Ross this year, great. But the way Nathan MacKinnon is wired, he's not going to want to. He wins the Art Ross Trophy and they don't win the Stanley Cup. He's going to throw the Art Ross Trophy in the garbage.
Yeah, he's going to pull Elias Anderson and just throw it into the stands.
Yeah. As a Ranger fan, a bright spot lately has been Adam Fox. 7 points in his last 5 games played. He's been finding the back of the net. I got to tip my cap to Fox. Another one everybody wants traded before his no movement clause kicks in. It's like everybody wants to revert. Everybody wants to revert to the Hank era where, okay, let's have an elite goalie and a bunch of pluggers. And then everybody during the Hank era was, well, why don't we have a number 1 defenseman? Why don't we have any point per game forwards? It's ridiculousness. And then Stuart Skinner up in Edmonton, backstopping them to most of their victories. I got to give him credit on that. I don't know if he's the answer for these Oilers. Maybe he is. And maybe at the deadline, they have to address maybe getting someone that resembles a number 1 defenseman. But I got to give it to him as well.
Yeah. I'm going to highlight a few unconventional players here because I could easily highlight Nathan MacKinnon, Nikita Kucherov, Mikko Rantanen, Austin Matthews over the last 6 to 8 games of their play lately. But let's highlight some guys that haven't really garnered a lot of attention that are really doing some awesome things. First of all, for Minnesota, Joel Eriksson Ek, 11 points in his last 7 games, 5 goals and 6 assists over that time. He has been a big reason why Minnesota is staying afloat. highlighting some Philadelphia players here. How about Cam Atkinson and Joel Farabee over their last 7 games? They both have 10 points apiece, 5 goals and 5 assists for both players over that time. 2 players right there that are a big reason why Philadelphia is still one of the top teams in the Metropolitan Division. So surprisingly, Jared McCann for the Seattle Kraken, 10 points in his last 7 games as well, 5 goals, 5 assists in that time. Rupe Hintz as well, 10 points in his last 7 for the Dallas Stars. You know, just a lot of fun hockey being played by a lot of players lately. Lastly, I've highlighted him once before, but he's still a player that when I think about once it comes to Norris Trophy time, he could be a guy that could be a dark horse in the conversation, and that's Noah Dobson for the New York Islanders. His 10 points over his last 7 games are 10 assists over his last 7 games. He's also averaging about 25 to 26 minutes a night right now. His time to shine has really started to come in for the New York Islanders, and it stinks because they're kind of a mid team at the moment. But we're going to round out our episode here with our question of the day. Tom, I'm going to bring us back towards the top of the episode, which is, let's think realistically. Let's think, in general, will we see an NHL team in Utah in the next 5 years? Yes or no?
Under current circumstances, no. Like I mentioned before, that arena either needs to be remodeled or they need to build a hockey specific arena for them. They're not going to let that work. They did that once in Phoenix. They did it with the Islanders at the Barclays Center, playing in a rink with basketball dimensions. It's going to be really rough. Unless somebody in Utah, the owners of the Jazz and the potential owners of whatever Utah hockey team, this is the same owners, great. Unless somebody is really on board with getting that arena renovated for hockey, then yes. But right now, the way it is, I looked at the dimensions for it. You have the seats pushed back on both basically in both end zones of the rink. I don't think it's going to work right now. And that they're going to have to pump a lot of money into renovating that arena, and that's not going to be cheap.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you here. I mean, over the next 5 years, it would be nice to see another team, something brand new, a new idea, maybe going to a team in Utah. But realistically speaking, there's going to be some movement that's going to need to take place for something like that to happen. And I got to think that there's some other cities that are more equipped at the moment to take on an NHL franchise that are more prepared right now than Utah at the moment. But we'll have to see. And as always, guys, what do you guys think? Do you agree, disagree with our takes? Let us know in the comments section down below what you guys think. And make sure that you subscribe down below, youtube.com/i80sports. And comment down below with your thoughts. But like I mentioned at the top of the episode, please, don't make the comment section a breeding ground for bad takes. Please make sure you police yourself down below. And also hit the like button if you like the content that we're currently pumping out. Hit the bell notifications so that way you guys know when our content goes live. If you're still on X and you don't currently follow us, make sure you follow us down below at i80_sportsNHL. And if you follow us already, thank you guys so much because we greatly value all of your support. But time for us to stop talking. Time to start watching more hockey. So until then, I'm Brian. He's Tom. This has been yet another episode of NHL on I80 Sports.